It's a Marty party.
This quote comes from the TV show The Office, one of my favorite TV shows. It's an amazing sitcom. And if you're a fan of that show, then you know Andy Barnard. Yeah, Andy Bernard. He's a character played by Ed Helms. And in the series finale, the last episode of that entire show, he said, "I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them." Yeah, Andy. I wish there was a way. And I've been thinking a lot about that lately. I want to talk about nostalgia, specifically millennial nostalgia. I was born in 1986. It's 2026. I turned 40 this year. All right. I'm kind of an elder millennial. It's been giving me a lot to think about. And I know everybody has a lot to think about when they start getting into those middle ages. You turn 40. I'm not nervous about getting old. I'm not afraid of turning 40 or anything like that. It's just I've lived so much life at this point that I've now started to look back on it. And some of it I'm nostalgic for, some of it I'm sad about. I've got a few regrets and things that maybe I would have done differently. I don't have any regrets in the way that, like, hey, everything happened the way it did for a reason. I'm where I'm at right now because of all those things, good and bad, that happened. So no regrets in that sense, but definitely some things that I feel like done differently, and choices and things. And I just, you scroll on social media now and there's all these accounts, these like retro accounts that are reminding you of what it was like to be a kid growing up in the 90s and early to mid 2000s. And just as an elder millennial, the world that I grew up in doesn't exist anymore. And I can't help but think about that and dwell on it a little bit. I kind of grapple with everything we've been through as a generation, everything that's going on right now. And then we look back and say, man, I was in high school when 9/11 happened. We had the internet, but it wasn't the internet as we know it now. We didn't have social media. We didn't have all those things. We had these chat things and, AIM and MSN, and we burned CDs and we ran all over town. And even as little kids, we were riding our bikes all over the place, and we could just go and live without fear of judgment outside of our own peer group. We didn't have to worry about the wider going viral on the internet and the whole world seeing our jackassery. And certainly I was responsible for a lot of jackassery back then. Those are some of the best memories. Some of the best memories. I don't know. You go out drinking and the memories that happened. I saw that I think Health and Human Services just removed their recommendation to limit alcohol drinks to 1 to 2 a day, because they said that there's basically alcohol brings people together, and right now that's an element of society we're missing, is that more social aspect. People are too distant with each other, and maybe alcohol would bring more people together. I'm not sure I completely agree with, some people have some serious issues with alcohol, so I don't know that I love not recommending people to have moderation with alcohol, but I absolutely agree with this idea that, some of my best memories, some of my strongest friendships that I have to this day stemmed from many nights as an underage drinker, just getting blackout drunk together in the middle of a farm field or a hotel room or something like that. And I just, we did all of that without worrying about getting in too much trouble. You worried about the cops and getting a minor and things like that, but like, you didn't worry about that you were going to end up on the internet or anything, or on social media. We didn't have to worry about bullying on these different social media apps. It wasn't until my last year or two in high school that most people had cell phones, and they were like the little Nokia, type things. They didn't have cameras and all that sort of stuff. And you had to like, you watch how many minutes you used and things like that. It was a different world, and that world doesn't exist anymore. And, as we have aged as millennials, some of us went off and fought the war of our generation, the war on terror. We went to Iraq and Afghanistan. Others went to college and graduated into a recession and went through some hard times. And then we started raising kids in the middle of a pandemic lockdown. Like, man, it has to some extent feel like it's been one thing after another and that we've had a little bit of a rough go of it. But I also think that we were raised in a way that we were equipped to take on those life challenges. And we're not unique. Every generation goes through their challenges, right? Just like I remember exactly where I was on 9/11. There's people a generation or two behind me that remember exactly where they were when JFK was assassinated, and a generation behind that that knows exactly where they were when Pearl Harbor, the attack on Pearl Harbor happened. So it's not unique. People have been enduring hard lives for forever. And I wouldn't even say my experience as an American millennial, even with like going to war and all that stuff, like it hasn't been particularly hard, not compared to how some people have it in other countries. So, I don't know. It's just been a lot to think about lately. But there's this account I found on Instagram called Stuff That Rules. This guy started it recently, I think. And just every day he posts these reels of him just thinking about the simple things in life and is like, man, that rules. And I was like, that's kind of a great idea. And as I've uh, gotten nostalgic and thinking about what times used to be like as a young boy, a young man growing up, a young millennial. Um, you know, there's a lot of things that today I look at and I was like, man, that was awesome. I loved that. That at the time I didn't fully appreciate. So I narrowed it down to just 10. I could have given you 30, but I narrowed it down to 10. So here we go. The top 10 things that I think were awesome now, that are awesome now, but maybe I didn't fully appreciate back then when I was a kid. Number 10, being told to go play outside as a kid only to be stuck there all day because your parents locked you out. And I'm talking drinking from the fire hose, not the fire hose, drinking from the garden hose, playing in the dirt, building forts, just peak imagination engaged, right? We were forced to go outside and just be bored. My parents would literally lock the door and not let us in. Like, be bored. Go ride your bike around the block, or sometimes we'd even get permission to ride our bikes down to the ice cream shop that was more like, I don't know, a half mile away or something like that. And it was a lot of fun. And at the time, I kind of hated. I hated being locked outside, and I'm bored. Not like being bored was good for me. I think it's why I'm in a creative field now, is because I was forced to be bored so much and make shit up to do to entertain myself so much as a kid. Number 9, going to freeze frame to rent a movie. Now, for some people, it was Blockbuster and things like that. We didn't have chains like that in Huron, where I grew up. We had this video store called Freeze Frame, and that eventually actually went out of business. And then there was a video store at the grocery store in town that you would go to. But either way, you go to this store and rent VHSs from there to take back and watch a movie. We didn't have Netflix back then. We didn't have smart TVs and all that sort of stuff. You had to go rent a physical copy of a movie. And the thing about it is, like, the really popular movies might have 3 or 4 copies there, but the older movies, the ones that aren't like new blockbuster releases, they only had 1 copy. If somebody else had that rented out, you'd just put your name on a list and they'd like maybe call you and let you know when it was ready, or you just have to come back over and over again and check if it was there. Yeah, what a way to live. It was annoying at the time. It felt like going to the video store and stuff. And when Netflix first came out, it was like such a novelty. But yeah, I look back on that now and I kind of loved going and browsing the movie sections and taking 45 minutes sometimes just to decide on a movie, browsing those aisles. And then, yeah, that reminder to be kind and rewind before you returned it. Yeah, just a different time. Number 8, playground football in elementary school. There was like the kids that demanded to be all-time quarterback, and then the kids that were like real genuine athletes, and everybody else just running around. And we didn't have flags or anything. It was just two-hand touch. And man, it was a blast. And, if you went and crushed it during your 10-minute recess, you were kings of the school for the rest of that day, it felt like. And if it was snowing out or something like that, it was just, man, that was fun. Just good old-fashioned elementary school fun. I loved that. Number 7, going to Scott's Skate World. And the first time I ever held hands with a girl during a slow song. Scott's Skate World, I think this was a thing everywhere. Ours was called Scott's Skate World, but everybody had a roller rink back then in their town, it seemed like. And it was just this real unique thing. They were most popular in elementary school and maybe like sixth or seventh grade even, but mostly elementary school. And back, when you're that age, you're not having school dances or anything like that. And so at the skating rink, everybody would be out there on like rollerblades or they'd rent roller skates. And they'd always be playing these fast paced songs and you'd be having fun. There's like different games that you would do and stuff like that. But then they'd occasionally put on like the slow song and then you'd like go and like, you might like a girl or she might like you, and do that awkward thing, and then maybe both end up holding hands and skating, holding hands with each other a few laps around while the slow song played. And the first time that ever happens, those are those like social skills you develop as a young boy that I guess don't happen as much now. I guess now it's very rare for a guy to go approach a girl in like real life, and it's all done through apps and everything. When I was a young kid, you had to like go ask the girl to dance, or before that, you had to ask her to, uh, go hold hands while you rollerbladed. I wasn't super popular with the ladies in elementary school, but I do remember the first time a girl held my hand while we skated, and what a formative time as a boy that was excited to be a young man someday. Number 6, are you going to be on MSN tonight? I remember saying that with my friends, and that was always a thing that people would ask during the day. MSN for us, other people had AOL, Instant Messenger, or AIM. I talked to my wife and her friends all used AIM. All me and my friends, we used MSN growing up. We all had Hotmail addresses, and that was just like, that was the social thing. Like if people couldn't go out, it was a school night or whatever, everybody would get on their home computer and log into MSN and you'd chat and stuff, and maybe wait for the girl that you really like to come on and show her availability and start chatting. And then everybody's dealing with like, their parents or siblings yelling at them to get off the internet because they need to make a phone call, because it was all dial-up internet then. So you just had to, if you wanted to use the phone, you had to be off the internet. And if you wanted to use the internet, you had to be off the phone. So just special time, a special time doing that. Good memories there. Number 5, the DJ putting on that song Get Low during a school dance. And then me and all of my friends, every kid on that dance floor, when it gets to that point of the song, yelling at the top of our lungs in front of teachers, chaperones, and God, from the windows to the walls, to the sweat drop down my balls, and just yelling that at the top of your lungs. I mean, I can't believe we did some of the things that we did. You're all in there like grinding with each other, and just everybody's sweaty, and it's in the high school lunchroom, you pay the local DJ to come in and put it on, and there's adults there and they're just watching us bump and grind with each other and play things like Get Low and Baby Got Back. I can't imagine that as a parent now. I would feel so awkward and probably not be okay with it, but like, I would be a massive hypocrite today if I said something to my kids about that because of the way I acted in high school, in middle school, at those school dances. Like, just absolutely crazy. But man, some really good memories. I mean, we yelled some pretty profane things at some of those dances. Number 4, waiting in line outside the movie theater on opening night of a big movie. Now, today, everybody goes on Fandango or an app somewhere to buy their movie ticket, select their specific seats. So there's not really any lines at the movie theater anymore, not even on big opening nights. That's kind of a thing of the past now. But back when I was growing up, one, you didn't have these big recliner seats where everybody was nice and separate. You were all kind of packed in there like sardines. And on opening night for a big movie, that line would be like around out the theater and around the block. Like you'd have to wait in line, and if you wanted to get a good seat, you'd get there really early. I remember there were times that me and my friends would go camp out in front of the movie theater to make sure that we had like a middle, like sort of front row seat in the theater, like those perfect seats that everybody wants. And you just don't have, and it was just this social event. There was so much community involved in that. Even as a young adult, when me and my then girlfriend, now wife, would go to the movies down in Savannah, Georgia, so I remember some of these big releases, and those they had bigger theaters in Savannah than what I had growing up, and they'd have these big lobbies, and those lobbies would just be packed with people, and a bunch of them would be dressed up as characters in the movie and things like that. And there was just this buzz in the air, and there was so much excitement, and then you would all file in. And again, hopefully you got there early enough to get a decent seat. Otherwise, you'd be stuck in like a corner somewhere where it was hard to see. And it just, man, I mean, I appreciate the especially as an adult now with like kids and stuff. Like, I appreciate the fact that I can go sit in a recliner chair there. I appreciate the fact that I can pick my seats ahead of time and I don't have to wait in a line. But man, it was pretty awesome going to the movies on a big opening night back when I was younger. So I do miss that. Um, Number three, getting to the top three now of awesome things that I didn't fully appreciate when I was growing up. Number three, downloading songs from LimeWire and burning CDs. Yeah, I mean, there was no Spotify, there was no Apple Music or anything like that. You had to go download these songs off of super shady. I mean, and before you could like had LimeWire and stuff like that, a lot of times you'd have to just go buy CDs. And I remember we'd have these like big binders of CDs that we'd take with us on like basketball trips and things like that. And you trade CDs with people. And like, you know, for me, my parents didn't let me have certain music, so I'd always trade with other people to be able to listen to that music on trips and things like that. And then once, you know, LimeWire came out, you know, and people started burning CDs, and you kind of be judged on the mixed CDs that you had and the way you arrange songs. And like, I like music and everything, but I've never been the like really into music guy that knows everybody's name in the band and all these underground bands and things like that. Like, I've never been that guy. But I've got my favorite bands. It just all tends to be more conventional mainstream stuff. It's everything that I like, everybody's heard of, right? And that's how I was as a kid too. And you'd kind of be judged on like the mixed CDs that you had, and you'd be excited when a new show came out, and like half the time not half the time, but a decent portion of the time, you download something on LimeWire, and it would download a virus onto your computer. And again, you've got one computer in the house, it's the family computer, and you just destroyed it with some virus you downloaded while trying to download Get Low by Lil Jon, you know. And then the songs that you did download, you'd always have to hunt for the ones that didn't have like the radio edits on it and like the DJ talking over it for the first 3 minutes of the song and all of that. Like, you wanted to find like a good, clean, unedited copy of the song. That was always a lot of fun too. I think LimeWire, if I remember correctly, on LimeWire, you could see the ratings of each song that you could download to see the quality of it, I think. Maybe I'm making that up. It's hard to remember at this point, but I miss that. Number two, sneaking out of my parents' house at night to go to a bonfire party in the middle of some farmer's land. I mean, like I said, I got into all sorts of shenanigans when I was a kid. It's funny that I run a podcast now called The Marty Party. Because I don't really party anymore. I very rarely drink and things like that. And speaking of, I need a sip of this coffee. But you know, I remember, you know, going to bed, pretending to go to sleep. All the lights are off, the house is locked up, and then I'd sneak out after my parents and everybody was asleep and meet one of my friends a block or two away from my house so that my parents wouldn't hear a car pulling up outside our house, and then go drive 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 miles out of town into the middle of some field, get a bonfire going, throwing pallets on the fire and stuff. People pull their vehicles around, a few trucks backed up, and plenty of beer out there, cases of Bud Light and Busch Light and Coors Light. And, you know, somebody would always have a few handles of liquor out there too. And, you know, I'd mix like rum and Dr. Pepper in a Dr. Pepper bottle, or a Jack and Coke in a Coke bottle. And man, we had a lot of fun. It was like I said, they recently changed the government changed the recommendations about not limiting alcohol and everything. Again, I can't with a straight face say that they're completely wrong, because a big part of who I am, and I've got lifelong friends that I have to this day that I used to go get shitty drunk with in the middle of a field somewhere. And we're all professionals now and have serious grown up jobs and families and kids and all that sort of stuff. But those were formative years, going out there and figuring out somebody to go buy you alcohol. You know, I worked at a bunch of different jobs, and I always worked at these jobs where there'd be older, like adults there. And I'd always talk one of them into going and buying a bunch of beer and alcohol for me and my friends, and taking that out. And just, man, those were really fun times. I thought they were awesome then, I guess. But I really think that I am so grateful for those experiences now. I really am. I didn't fully recognize how awesome those experiences were. All right. The number one thing that I think is awesome now that maybe I didn't fully credit or realize back at the time growing up, disposable cameras and living life unedited. You know, for a long time, it was just those disposable cameras. You had 24 shots on them. You didn't know how they were going to turn out. All sorts of craziness on those, especially at those bonfire parties or house parties, things like that, or sports trips or Key Club or FBLA conventions, all those different sort of things that you do as a kid. We had all these physical photographs for it, and you wouldn't know how they'd turn out, and people wouldn't censor themselves on it because they knew the only people that would see those pictures are them and their friends anyways. It's not going on the internet. And even once people started to get like those little handheld digital cameras, and things started to get posted to Facebook during college and stuff like that, or MySpace for a while there, you know, it was still, people would just throw up entire albums of photos. They weren't editing them too closely. You'd have all sorts of stuff ending up and getting tagged on Facebook that weren't maybe the most flattering moments and stuff. But people, again, you were only accountable to your friends, your peer group, the people that you knew in real life. That was who you were accountable to. You didn't have to worry about doing something dumb and going viral on the internet or having the entire world get mad at you about something because you said something dumb or did something dumb in the moment and when you were caught up. And I just, I feel bad for kids today that have to edit their life so much and deal with online bullying and deal with being under the microscope of the world at any given time because everybody's got a camera in their pocket and instant access to the internet everywhere that they go. It's it's sad for them, you know, and I really appreciate now in retrospect the opportunities that I had to just live life and have a good time with my friends and family without worrying anything. And I love that a lot of those memories are preserved on physical photographs that I still have in photo albums to this day. They're not living on the internet somewhere. They won't all disappear if a platform gets deleted or an account gets deleted. I have those photographs, and that's pretty amazing. Like I said, if only you knew you were in the good old days while you were still in the good old days. What a great quote. But yeah, that's I'll quit being so nostalgic now. Like I said, I'm turning 40 this year, thinking about all this stuff. I know I'm not the only one. I'm not the only millennial that's contemplating life and looking at what's already been and what's possibly ahead in these uncertain times.
It's a Marty party. It's a Marty party.